Today my guest is Dan Tarbutton, Senior Vice President of Community Management and Service at the Irvine Company Apartment Communities. Dan comes from a military background. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, where he flew helicopters, but not just any helicopter. Dan flew Marine One for both Presidents Bush and Obama. While serving his country, he earned numerous distinctions: a Meritorious Service Medal, a Bronze Star and Air Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, and a Joint Commander's Commendation from the British Army, among many, many more. One of his last posts before leaving for the private sector was Executive Officer of the Basic School in Quantico. And the Basic School oversees all new officer training for the Marine Corps. They focus on leadership, ethics, and military skills. He also served as the Director, Aviation Operations Support at Camp Pendleton here in California. He has his MBA from the University of Southern California, and 5 years ago he joined the Irvine Company as the VP of Strategic Initiatives and has since become the Senior Vice President of Community Management and Service. He's known for his leadership, his ability to communicate with all levels of the organization, his executive level management, strategic planning, and his operational planning and execution, as well as the guy who always has a values card in his pocket. One of those initiatives was spearheading a company culture initiative that has moved the values of the company from a nice plaque on the wall to an active part of daily life and business. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. It's good to be here.
It's so good to have you, my friend. So we're going to just jump right in. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but the first thing is I always like to ask how you define success.
I knew you were going to ask me this. So, success, I think, is actually really hard to define. Most people think in terms of success in some ways of achieving an objective, achieving a goal. But I think in the grand scheme of life, it's really about, it's not necessarily about achieving some end state, it's really more about the journey. Because you could say, financial success is dollars, but that doesn't really mean much. You measure family success in different ways and everything else. So I think success to me is really on just a daily basis. Am I doing everything I can do to further along whatever I'm trying to work on? Am I doing something every day to be the best husband and father I can? Am I doing something every day to try to drive the business in some way as best I can? Those types of things.
So speak just a little bit more about that, because we hear from leaders a lot that it is about more the journey than this like definitive goal somewhere in the future. But a lot of us fall into that trap of that thing that's over there. So how do you kind of remind yourself or make that like a daily kind of way of being? What has been your process to make sure that stays front and center?
I don't know that I have a specific process. I think it's, obviously in my mind, hopefully in the company's mind, we have a vision for where we're trying to go. But I think for me, it's just on a daily basis, just going through the day. Okay, what can I be doing? What's the best thing I should be doing right now? Am I being successful in this specific thing? Have we made some ground today? Those types of things.
Did you learn, were you naturally that? Was that something as a kid you always found yourself just trying to be your best, or did you learn that? Was that, what was your experience of?
I think life experience in general, right? So, my father, I give him a lot of credit. He was a hard worker. That was kind of number one for him, was working hard and providing for his family. So that obviously impacted who I was growing up. In high school, we had this mantra called Men for Others, where it was really focused on trying to be the best person you could be for those around you and serving others. And then obviously I think the Marine Corps had a major impact on who I am now. Obviously, I learned so much through the Marine Corps about leadership, around focusing on the mission at hand, focusing on keeping at it until you achieve what you're trying to achieve, that tenacity. So I think a lot of different things have kind of driven me in that way. And then obviously, I think one of the most important things about becoming a leader is to me, it seems to be family. I think I would say I learned as much about leadership from being a husband and father as I do from anything I've done in the Marine Corps or in the business world.
Tell me, is there anything that comes to mind that as a father was like a one of the lessons that comes to mind from that side of your life versus the?
Well, it's just, especially when you're dealing with kids, you're trying to guide your kids in different ways to get them to, you want to teach them to come up right, have good values, do the right thing, and it's a daily struggle. You have to be involved all the time. You have to kind of guide them along the way, but you can't just always be telling them what to do. You got to try to coax them a little bit, and all those things really help in the workplace too, because in the workplace, especially when you're dealing with change, people need to be brought along. You need to help people see the value in what you're trying to do, and it's really the same skill set to me.
I think that's brilliant. So for everybody listening too, like that leadership training and becoming a better leader works everywhere, right? The application of being a good leader works everywhere, and it's also, you can learn everywhere. It's not just you practice at work, you can practice at home, and often that's like a very dramatic practice field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when I look back at some of the young officers that worked under me in the Marine Corps. It's kind of interesting. Most young leaders tend to be more kind of the authoritarian types, right? They want to just come out and tell you what to do, and this is what we're going to do. And slowly over time, as they're growing through their leadership journey, at work or in service, they're learning that doesn't work. And then all of a sudden, these guys and gals get families, and now they're trying to drive a family. And then all of a sudden, you see their leadership styles change. It's really been a fascinating thing to watch over the years.
That's awesome. Why the Marine Corps? What made you choose into the Marines?
I think I played too much G.I. Joe as a kid. I don't know. I think the Marines had an impact on me from the time I was pretty young. The G.I. Joe thing is no kidding true. I did have an uncle. I wasn't close to him, but I had an uncle that was a lieutenant in Vietnam. And I think just the aura around the Marine Corps about the first to fight, the toughest, whatever you would say about the Marine Corps, that challenge I think is what drew me in the most. You want to be among the best, and I always looked at the Marine Corps as the best. So.
And how long were you in? What was your?
Just over 20 years.
Wow. Again, for those, if you end up watching this, like that feels like, so you started at what age?
So that would be, it was 22 when I started active duty.
Amazing, and obviously there's a lot in there, but could you tell one kind of pivotal experience or one defining moment you had in those 20 years as a Marine?
Oh man, just one.
You can go anywhere you want, but
Well, I'll tell you one of my first ones. So in the Marine Corps, as an officer, you start at what's called the basic school, right? So it's like you said, the school for leadership, military skills, and ethics. So from there, then you go on to flight school. For me, flight school was about 2 years, most of it in Pensacola, Florida. Then I came out to California, learned to fly the Cobra attack helicopter.
That sounds awesome.
But at no point in there are you really leading anybody, right? So then I finally get assigned to my first unit in 1998. And I was given this job as the family advocacy officer, and for some reason they gave the most junior lieutenant this job. And the idea was, if something happened on base between, say, a service member and their spouse, and the cops were called, somebody from the command had to get involved in this and discuss the issue. Well, my first case, of course, was this very, I guess, crusty would be the word we use in the Marine Corps, is an older enlisted gentleman, and he was not too impressed with me coming into his office to ask him about his family and his situation. He pretty much shut me down, and that was a key point for me. I was like, wow, I'm not so smart. I got to figure this out. So then I had to back up and get a little bit of counsel from some of my seniors and figure out a better approach, because I just didn't have any idea what I was doing.
Yeah. And as you moved through the ranks, so I guess I wanted to, the Marine Corps in particular, you mentioned as the best, the brightest, and all those, which I think it becomes known for, also based steeped in values.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke a little bit of that with your dad, but what kind of role did the values of the Marine Corps have, for you?
Well, in the Marine Corps, the values are really central. And from the very beginning of training on the officer side, in fact, I'll never forget the first time you go to what's called Officer Candidate School. They sit there, they give you this little book, and you have to memorize the 14 leadership traits and principles, and you have to memorize them. And so there are things like dependability. I got my list somewhere around here. Bearing, courage, decisiveness, all these things. But then also this whole focus on values is consistent throughout your training. Integrity being number one. There are young officers who at the basic school get sent home if they violate their integrity. They get sent home from Officer Candidate School if they violate their integrity. And so integrity kind of becomes one of these central values that just has to be, it becomes who you are as you proceed through your career. And it's obviously incredibly important, when you're in a military unit, to maintain trust and everything else. So values are key. I mean, there was a point where we carried honor, courage, and commitment cards with us. We all had to sign the thing and carry it around with us. And then I had this, probably the most influential leader I had was when I was the XO of the basic school, a guy named Colonel Todd DeGrossier. He brought values centrally to everything we did, and we were going through, it was during sequestration 2012-13, and we had to restructure the organization. And it was just fascinating. He made everybody carry a little small copy of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in your pocket. You had to carry another little card that was the 4 cardinal virtues with a small definition. And it wasn't just something that was in our pocket. It was something that we talked about. It was something that you would break out at the end of the meeting to have a discussion on a value or your oath of office. And when the organization was going through such a trying time of change, focusing everybody on those was incredible. I mean, there were times where we would go for a 10-mile hike, and then you'd come back to this big field, and then we'd go to all do martial arts together and beat each other up in the mud. And then right at the end of it, now we're pulling out a card to talk about prudence and temperance and these values that everybody was able to identify with, and it just really brought it home and solidified.